Hello dear viewers and welcome to the 5es.sausaq channel. Today we will tell you about a significant event that took place in Kazakhstan and made the whole world pay attention. Kazakhstan, like any other country, faces various social problems, and one of them is domestic violence. For a long time, the legislation in this area remained insufficiently strict, which led to negative consequences for the victims of this violence. However, a significant event has recently taken place in Kazakhstan. A law was signed that toughened penalties for domestic violence. This law was the result of long efforts of public organizations, human rights defenders, and activists who fought for women's rights and protection from domestic violence. In our video today, we will tell you about the ordeal Kazakhstan had to go through to finally tighten this law. We will look at the issue through the prism of the chronology of events, allowing us to understand how the public and political will for such an important decision was formed. On April 11, 2024, the President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev signed a law amending Kazakhstan's legislation to better protect women's rights and children's safety. This law aims to improve various aspects of life, from laws to social services. It amends 15 laws, including 7 codes and 8 laws. The adoption of the amendments went through extensive discussions with the participation of representatives of public organizations, as well as the National Kurultay, the National Commission on Women and Family Policy, the National Center for Human Rights, and the Commissioner for Children's Rights. One of the reasons for tightening the law was that the upper house of parliament received more than 5,000 appeals in support of the adoption of the law on the protection of women's rights and children's rights. The Senate said it had received 5,070 appeals from Kazakhstanis. The action calling for the adoption of a law on the criminalization of violence was launched by the public foundation Erkinlik Qanati. The initiative group urged Kazakhstanis to send appeals until the law is adopted. But this was not the first civic initiative in support of the criminalization of domestic violence. In November 2023, a petition against domestic violence was launched after the death of Saltanat Nukenova, who was murdered by an ex-minister. It was signed by more than 150,000 Kazakhstanis. Which petition, you may ask? In early 2023, one of the country's former high-ranking officials beat his wife, Saltanat Nukenova, in a restaurant he owned in Astana. The woman died there. The crime was widely published in the media and caused a flurry of outrage in Kazakhstani society. The brother of woman Aitbek, after the incident with his sister, began to actively conduct his Instagram. On April 3rd, together with Dina Ismailova, founder of the Foundation Public Movement Against Violence, Nimalchi-KZ, and Khalida Zhigulova, an academic and human rights lawyer, held a live broadcast. They said that it was necessary to send a letter to the Senate with the position of tightening responsibility for domestic violence. Zakon Saltanat has become a promotion of toughening the law in family and domestic violence. After the arrest of Kuanduk Bishimbayev, the ex-minister, a flash mob was launched in social networks with a demand to stop violence against women. It was initiated by Kazakhstani activists and feminists. Girls published photos of themselves with makeup imitating blood and marks from beatings.
Боремся за закон Салтанат, за то, чтобы у нас, у наших детей, у наших сестер, матерей, дочерей было лучшее будущее, были права, была возможность защитить.
The number of criminal offenses in the domestic sphere is growing annually. On January 23, Dina Amrisheva, acting head of UN Women Office in our country, told about the situation in general and what measures are taken by the international organizations in Kazakhstan. Over the past 5 years in Kazakhstan, the number of criminal offenses in the domestic sphere has more than doubled. These are the statistics of UN Women in Kazakhstan. According to the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Kazakhstan, in 2022, the police received more than 115,000 appeals on the facts of domestic violence. Only last year, more than 50,000 women applied to the police. At the same time, according to the Ministry of Culture and Information of the Republic of Kazakhstan, over the past 4.5 years, 869 people have died as a result of domestic violence, and 2,086 cases of serious harm to health have been registered. This demonstrates the need for more decisive measures to combat violence.
У нас это, можно сказать, настоящая эпидемия. Вот не проходит буквально и дня, чтобы не сообщали о новых проблемах с домашним насилием, о новых каких-то случаях.
Back in September 2022, the president mandated tougher penalties for domestic violence. The changes were as follows. Cases on administrative offenses could be initiated on the basis of clear evidence without a statement from the victim of violence. Abolition of the possibility of repeated reconciliation between the parties. And now, only one single case of reconciliation is allowed, and it must take place in court. But back in 2017, on July 3rd, Kazakhstan decriminalized the law on domestic violence, which meant that rapists could only be held administratively liable for domestic violence instead of criminally liable. But why the law took so long to be adopted? The new law, unofficially called Sultanat's Law, after the name of the wife of the ex-minister of Kazakhstan who was beaten to death by him, was considered for an unprecedentedly long time. It was submitted to Kazakhstan parliament in March 2020, before the coronavirus pandemic began. Despite many appeals from human rights organizations, deputies rejected the bill several times under the pretext that it contained various flaws. Moreover, some representatives of the deputy corps and public figures supporting them have periodically openly opposed the tightening of liability for domestic violence. The most popular theories among opponents of the bill were claims that its adoption would damage national traditions and infringe on men's rights. Among other things, critics even stated that women themselves and their provoking to violence open clothes are often to blame for domestic conflicts. At the same time, it was proposed to adopt a law on the head of the family. Domestic violence in Kazakhstan used to be considered an absolute norm and maybe even good practice. This can be seen in numerous entertainment videos of the past time and in the notions of the older generation. For example, in one of the episodes of the famous comedy theatre of its time, Tamasha, they compare two women, one of whom plays a woman who is beaten at home by her husband and is happy, and the second woman is a woman who has never been beaten by her husband and is unhappy. The main point of the video is this: if your husband doesn't beat you, you are not happy. The reaction of the audience to this performance speaks for itself. Many nodded approvingly, supporting the jokes, and clapped, even the female viewers themselves. This shows the attitude of the people of that time to such serious problems as domestic violence.
Как вы оцениваете принятие закона о криминализации домашнего насилия?
Жақсы. Менің ойымша бұл закон біздің елімізге қажет, және де соңғы болып жатқан жайттармен Салтанат Дукенованың бұл қабылданған заң баяғыдан қажет болған, және қабылданғаны мен үшін өте қуанышты жағдай.
Мне кажется, давно надо было это сделать, а не ждать, пока девушка, умрет. Вот. Правильное решение, поддерживаю.
Мне кажется, это давно должно было происходить. И то, что это происходит сейчас, конечно, с одной стороны грустно, но с одной стороны еще радует.
Мен өте қуаныштымын, шынымды айтсам. Біз бәріміз группаластармен отырып талқылайтынбыз. И негізі қатты уайымдайтынбыз бәріміз бірге. Қабылдаған кезде бәріміз бірге тойлап,
Когда мне было 9 лет, примерно тогда начал, потому что на меня в глазах избивали кого-то. Мужской пол избивал женский пол. После этого я задумался, кто это самовидительница. Потом читал, но в тогдашнее время это было так нормально. Мужик бьет женщину, это нормально. Но я не услышал того, что Токаев подписал что-то. Я только сейчас узнал. Ну это круто. Я рад.
The signing of this law opens a new chapter in the fight against domestic violence in Kazakhstan and calls for public condemnation of such crimes. We hope that these new legislative measures will bring long-awaited changes and create a safe environment for women and children in our country. We will follow the developments and continue to cover topical issues on our channel 5es.sausaq. In conclusion, let's us together support this important step in protecting women's rights and children's safety by subscribing to our channel 5es.sausaq and actively discussing these issues in the comments below. Your subscription and engagement will help us continue to cover relevant topics and bring positive change to our society. Thank you for your support. Together, we can achieve more.